Thank you so much. And hi, everybody. I have to tell you guys, this is the first time I finally update my Zoom background and I get a pro background. So I hope that it's helping out because I'm on the other side of the world right now. But I'm very excited to join you guys today. And what we are going to talk about here is zooming out a little bit and getting the high level picture on global impact and sustainability investing. What are the trends? What are the insights? And most importantly, what is the concrete executional path towards utopia rather than dystopia? As we like to say, we have all the building blocks present in impact and sustainability investing. And so what I will share with you guys today is a little bit of what we're seeing at top tier impact through the 45 countries that we cover at this point, and what we think is very relevant from a corporate and investment perspective to be part of this positive change in a concrete way that benefits everybody, benefits the company itself, benefits the ecosystem, and everybody who's part of that, whether that's nature or the people. So at top tier impact, we see through our events like the more concrete parts of this, like impact metrics, regulatory changes. So we'll put a little bit of that on the side. We'll touch upon a few of these, but we cover them through our member events every week. And so I will sort of put those topics on a break, trying not to bring them too much into it so that I can share with you guys actually like these global overview of what's really happening and what we think is most relevant for stakeholders like you guys today. So on the corporate side, what we've seen in the past months, obviously from a regulatory perspective, is so much change, right? Like TCFD, which at top tier impact, we have several businesses to our group. So we obviously have the private network, we have a global strategy business doing climate risk scenario planning, net zero energy strategy, ESG with publicly listed companies, and then we have our investing unit. So what we have seen on the corporate side of things is a little bit of a rush to understand what does TCFD mean to us, but what does it mean both in terms of what the implementation is today and also how it impacts our industry as a whole, right? Because typically the light bulb moment happens when having to do something like net zero, or having to implement ESG more at the core of the business, or having to do TCFD. And by the way, as many of you will know, there is the same of TCFD coming for nature, for water, for a few other areas. So we're actually just at the start of this. But the big opportunity here comes when realizing through looking at this scenario planning, it comes through realizing that there is a material, like significant financial impact on most industries and most business models. And I'm saying this because ultimately I do believe that it's important to understand this from a holistic perspective, that it's not just like, okay, it's the right thing to do, but actually it's materially relevant to our business as well. And so what we see with the corporates we work with is this aha moment that happens when you realize that it's not just about a much more complex checkbox exercise. This needs to be integrated in the core of the business because there is this impact, right? Like industry-wide and business model-wise. And we're actually seeing these across most sectors. I think it's going to accelerate. I think it's going to move much faster than we might expect, just like the last couple of years have been. I remember discussing ESG going mainstream a couple of years ago when they weren't mainstream yet and people were still talking about 5 years, and look at where we are at now. ESG really just is the baseline, right? There is much more to be put on top of it if you truly want to show up in impact and sustainability and lead the way. So what we think is relevant to understand from this perspective is these frameworks are actually offering you an incredible opportunity to be proactive about the change and to no longer just think, I have my sustainability strategy on the side, but actually see how these can be integrated in the core strategy and why that would be really relevant. I think that we all have an angle to look at it from in terms of like the sectors again. And so turn that obstacle into an opportunity. I think if you're here today, you already have the mindset for that. And I also believe that there's going to be a massive difference in terms of who is going to be still here as a business in 5 to 10 years from now, and who is not. and how proactive this approach to sustainability and climate was. So this is the corporate side. I would like to stop it here because now we're going to dive into the global investment trends and impact that we see, and these touches everybody, not just investors. So what we've observed at this point in time, because our investing unit covers on one side like early stage impact tech, and really we're talking about deep tech, biotech, synbio, synthetic biology, and a few other areas with a positive impact angle always. And this is more kind of seed to Series B stage, because that's where the state overall of those sectors are. Blockchain technology applied to positive areas, right? Like obviously renewable energy, like all of these areas, we cover that stage, but mostly we also focus on growth stage and pre-IPO, and emerging markets have leapfrogged in a way that, I mean, it's just extraordinary how much things have changed in terms of like the volume and quality of growth stage businesses with phenomenal growth across the markets we cover. And really, we're in LATAM, we're across Southeast Asia, and increasingly in Africa as well. Like in Africa, we're currently covering 100 mil like pre-IPO debt fundraise with public sector investors, so DFIs, for fintech business that, you know, as you might imagine, have really gone from zero to here. What I'm telling you guys with this is that what is happening right now is, if you're covering developed markets, if you're here in Europe and you're focused on Europe, perhaps in the UK, and you're on the early stage impact side of things, you might really be thinking about the tech-driven applications and the tech-driven models. But if you're actually covering growth stage and you haven't been looking at these markets yet, I think that at this point of time, given where we are and given where the fundamentals are, where the impact is, that's not something that you can miss. At least being fully updated on what that looks like is so relevant. Why? Because markets like India are tripling their energy demand within a few years. Like, let's acknowledge that. Tripling their energy demand. Now, when many of us hear that, obviously there is a little bit of an alarm bell that goes on, right? Like we're all trying to lower this demand. It's important to remember a couple of things. Number one, what Factfulness, I guess some of you have read Factfulness, the book, what Factfulness tells us in terms of it's us in developed countries who need to lower our per capita footprint, is actually still valid even after these tripling and doubling in some other countries and other cases. It's still going to be valid after that. They're still going to be much lower than us per capita. However, the big deal right now for all of these countries is that with the growth and the middle class, especially, like this is a middle class macro movement, right, of increasing life standards. What's important to realize is that funding a sustainable development of that is more core than ever. So we've already seen that in ecosystems, like let's continue to use India right now as an example. Fintech has leapfrogged what we've had. You know, I was based in London for a very long time, and obviously London, with the whole fintech change that has happened over time, has had like a few very relevant new players coming up on the digital side of things. But frankly, there's still an adjustment in terms of infrastructure, legacy infrastructure, from legacy fintech and legacy finance. Whereas in markets like India, that's virtually not the case, because they've had the chance to move directly to infrastructure that is digital and that doesn't have these clunky issues, right? That then make it so much tougher and more expensive to implement innovation. And this is the case across pretty much all these sectors, whether that's education, healthcare, infrastructure used to be a wave, frankly, pre-COVID, because right now, sustainable, digital infrastructure, like sustainable data centers, right, are what's growing incredibly across all of these markets. And so,
Alessa, I have to ask you to, as your session has expired, just if you could quickly wrap things up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I was actually getting to that. Thank you. Because the thing is, I don't want to go into the concrete examples right now, but ultimately the message and the wrap up is, when we look at the big picture, there are tech-driven early stage opportunities across very impactful verticals for what concerns developed markets. For what concerns emerging markets, there is growth and pre-IPO that cannot be missed, needs to be understood at this point.
Thank you so much, Alessa. Thank you for joining us virtually here today.